What is if you're working with younger teachers or early career teachers, and they're just looking to you for advice on how should they go about setting up their grade book? This is their first time doing this, or they're really not sure where they're at philosophically. Is your advice that you land on when you have those conversations and supporting teachers at the earlier end of their career?
One of my favorite questions is just, if you take a traditional grade book, because this was the experience I had that really pushed me to rethink things, is maybe we'll open up their online grade book, or I'll show them an example of one of my older grade books and just say, how would you make this information more usable? Whether that's for you, or if you think about at the end of the year, when let's say you hand this grade book off to their next teacher, how could you make this more helpful for that teacher, for that student? Because I could say, hey, here's the best way to do it, but I was never the person that learned best that way. Like I really feel like it's important to just say, look at what we have now. How could we make this better? And really framing it as somebody has to use this data. How do we make that as useful as possible for them? What would we change? What would we reorganize? Because a lot of times what I found is there's not a huge change that maybe needs to take place in the data that we're collecting. It's usually just in how are we organizing it. So instead of having, quiz, homework, this, things all spread out, just saying, hey, this all connects to one skill. Let's put it together. And by doing that, all of a sudden we see trends. Students are able to make more sense of it. And that's really the step that started me in being able to avoid averaging. When it was all spread out, the only thing I could do was say, well, let's add up these points and divide. When I started organizing by the skill, that's where I could really say, hey, I see that you've shown a lot of growth. Your most recent attempts are 4s. You've got a 4 for that skill. So I think really asking the question, how could we use this data better for a new teacher, for everybody? I ask myself that question all the time, even though I'm not in the classroom. Like, I still am working with data. How do I use this data better? What do I need to change to make it more useful?
And then at the end of the year, your students and families potentially, how could this be better for you? What's better experience in doing
Mm-hmm.
grading? That it's something that I've shared about. Like, I love putting practices or choices I've made as a teacher on the board, and just like having students discuss in groups and like vote anonymously, like how do they feel about that choice? And then it's great data for me to make choices
Mm-hmm.
going forward. But I think there's something really empowering about sharing a practice or choice and saying, how can this be better? And those small steps towards better, they mean something.